of a blatant attack on a commercial vessel and says that Tehran has violated the terms of the peace deal and that in return, the United States has struck back. Here's where the United States has struck within Iran in the last 24 hours. Let's take a quick look at this map, which will show you where all they have struck. Very important centers as far as Iran is concerned. There is Just, there's Sirik, there's Bandar Abbas over here, and also, of course, further down, Asliye, Kangan, Bushehr, as well as Hendijan and Mashahar and Abadan areas which have been struck. Over 140 locations that now have been struck as far as these 140 locations are concerned. And clearly, it is the coastal areas that are being targeted majorly, including military installations by the United States. Now, the United States' aggression has prompted swift retaliation coming in from Iran. The IRGC is once again back to targeting American assets in the Middle East. What are they targeting? Let's take a quick look at that as well. They're looking at, of course, other countries in the neighborhood. There is, of course, Jordan on one side. There is also UAE and Qatar. These are the three countries which have so far been at the receiving end of the attacks coming in from Iran. Iran, of course, officially saying that they are attacking US bases, but we know that this is just the beginning. This could very well be a ruse to take other targets out. And for instance, American corporations have been attacked, civilian areas also where some of these missiles have fallen in the past. Now, Iran going for the jugular once again, announcing that the Strait of Hormuz has been closed with no ships being allowed to pass until further notice. Now, this announcement comes after Iran accused an unauthorized vessel of taking an illegal route through the strait. Tehran claims that it fired a warning shot at the vessel before this closure was announced. Now, the status of the key shipping route has remained uncertain in recent days, with repeated reports of the waterway being reopened and partially reopened and then now shut again. This comes after multiple strikes on vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz in the last few days. What exactly has happened? Let's take a very quick look at that. There is, of course, on the 7th of July 2026, when the Qatari LNG tanker was hit. It was hit near Oman. Let's look at the next instance that we're talking about. On the 7th of July, we also saw the Saudi crude oil tanker that was damaged near Hormuz. Apart from this, between the 7th to 8th of July, another commercial vessel, a tanker, was hit in the same region. On the 11th of July, it is MV GFS Galaxy, the vessel that was hit near the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this vessel, of course, had 11 Indians, 10 have been found, 1 reported to be missing as far as GFS Galaxy is concerned. But what really is going to be the outcome of this? Because for India in particular, there's a huge amount of stakes in terms of the presence of Indians there, the presence of Indians who are not just working in the Middle East, but also a large number of them as sailors working in commercial shipping as well. What happens to those individuals remains a very, very key concern for Indians at large. All right, let's quickly open this up and take it across to our guest. With us is Lieutenant General KJS Dhillon, who's a defense expert. We have with us Brahma Chelani, strategic affairs expert as well. Adolfo Franco is a Republican strategist. But my first question is to Syed Imamia, who's a co-founder of GPTT. Mr. Imamia, the question that is on many people's minds is that why is Iran doing this? Because as per the terms of the agreement, Iran was supposed to provide safe passage. But does that give Iran the right then to attack ships that are either in international waters or in the waters of another country?
The statement and the MOU point 5 is very clear. Iran has the only right to have an arrangement for the safe passage through the strait. So any alternative route is against the Iranian arrangement and is clearly against the text of the point 5 of the MOU. And the rationale behind that is very simple. If there would be another route, there would be a chance for, again, another round of the military buildup against Iranian national security. So Iran won't allow anytime soon to be threatened again to its children in the schools to be massacred by U.S. military attacks using the Iranian geopolitical leverage of the Strait of the Hormuz.
So Iran is going to be setting a very wrong precedent because there are multiple conflicts, there are multiple fault lines across the world. If any one country starts to dictate terms to the other country or does not follow, international law when it comes to international waters, then that is going to set a very, very wrong precedent. And, other countries will start using it and doing exactly as they feel.
based my understanding as an academic, what Iran is doing is completely based on international rule and based on the MOU. From international rules point of view, Iran has been committed to innocent passage. Innocent passage allows countries that they have been threatened by aggressors to use some limitation on the passage from the straits. And also based on the MOU, it's very clear that it is Iranian rights to implement its own arrangement. So from both points of view, what Iran is doing is completely justifiable and defendable.
Let me bring in Adolfo Franco on that note. Mr. Adolfo Franco, you heard the Iranian guest on our show who says that he believes that Iran has followed international law. Do you agree with him?
Well, absolutely. I don't want to be disrespectful here, but that's absolute nonsense in every regard. Keep in mind that no one from Iran can speak freely. But let me explain two or three things. First, there's nothing in the MOU that says Iran has the right to authorize use and only one route can be used and Iran can control it. They're just not in there at all. That's just wholly made up and fabricated. First. Secondly, even if there were such a thing in the MOU as your question posed, other countries are not bound by this at all. This, in fact, the incident that happened yesterday was on Omani territorial waters. Iran has no right, whether in war or not, to shut an international waterway from any country that's neutral. Arguably, Iran could take action against U.S. warships. But even in this case, remember, we were supposed to be in a truce period. And as your program began, Iran has been hitting commercial vessels with Indians and other nationals in it. None of the assets that have been hit cowardly, this is the cowardly acts of terrorists, are military targets. They have been oil tankers, Saudi, Qatari oil tankers, and one from Cyprus. So this is, first of all, I was chief counsel of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and I know a little about maritime law and international law. There is no such thing as a country seizing an entire waterway, and in addition to that, claiming the territorial waters of Oman and other countries. You did omit in your beginning that Iran hit Oman yesterday as well. Oman, while their foreign minister was there. So that tells you the recklessness of a radical revolutionary guard that is doing things at will to try to create terror. This is all designed to do one thing: intimidate our Arab allies and create a state of situation in the Strait of Hormuz, which will deter allies from siding with the United States.
Okay. Mr. Imami, I want you to take that question, because why is this happening is very important for all of us to understand, because it's happening while there are negotiations going on. There were talks going on. And Trump, of course, believes that there is a radical section amongst the IRGC that does not want peace to prevail, that wants the conflict to continue. Is that indeed the case?
In my understanding, what President Trump is saying is not trustable at all. He was the one who attacked Iran twice once negotiations were going on. So he is the man of betrayal. He is the man of illegitimate, unprovoked aggression against a country, a sovereign country like Iran. What is happening now is a political consensus, as I understand the situation, amongst the wide range of the political spectrum in Iran, that this is the top Iranian government to make sure that the Iranian national security won't be threatened again using the Strait of the Hormuz. So this is a huge political and public demand for Iranian negotiating team to make sure that the MOU would be fully implemented one by one.
Okay.
So one of the main important points of MOU is point 5 regarding the only Iranian arrangement to be implemented over the strait during these 60 days.
But that point 5 talks about safe passage. It does not talk about attacking ships, particularly civilian ships.
Of course, but it talks about the Iranian arrangement. Anything against the Iranian arrangement should be resisted and should be countered.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Brahmachalani on that point. Okay, I got what you're trying to say, but let me bring in Mr. Brahmachalani. Mr. Brahmachalani, we've heard our guests from Iran and the United States. You know, that point 5, and especially when we all read that MOU, many were wondering whether the peace would actually last because there's so much of vagueness in terms of the wording. Each side says that we are following the MOU in letter and spirit, but just look at what's happening. Is there language itself to blame, perhaps?
There are two things, Madhav, that we should keep in mind. First, the Iran war has been a humiliating debacle for President Trump. His image has taken a beating at home and internationally, and Trump is still seeking ways to reclaim his image. This explains the latest U.S. attacks on Iran and Trump's repeated statements that he believes the ceasefire with Iran is over. Now, there's a paradox here. If you would recall that just last month, the U.S. Navy attacked commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz and killed 3 Indian sailors. Now, Trump is accusing Iran of the same offense, targeting commercial vessels, though without causing any fatality. Washington has effectively shredded its MOU with Tehran, including revoking the export license for Iranian oil. Oil prices, as you know, have already risen sharply in response. And the second important point that we should keep in mind, that the present tug of war between the US and Iran is not about reopening the Strait of Hormuz. It's about defining and controlling shipping lanes. The US is insisting that the shipping lane should be through Omani territorial waters. It should run almost hugging the Omani coastline, while Iran insists that the shipping lane through the Strait of Hormuz should be in the northern part of the strait, closer to Iran, so that Iran can have leverage. If the shipping lane that is in the Omani territorial waters becomes the route for ships, then of course Iran loses its leverage completely. So that is a real battle today about who's going to control, define and control shipping lanes. But we should not forget one important point, which is that this is a stalemate, neither war nor peace.
Absolutely.
Now, this neither war nor peace situation has continued for many weeks. And I don't think the present US strikes are going to change this stalemate because Trump has only unpalatable options. One is full military escalation beyond localized airstrikes to a full-scale ground invasion or a comprehensive campaign to decimate critical infrastructure. That would require a massive, highly unpopular deployment of American ground forces. And the other option is to continue with diplomacy. And we know diplomacy hasn't been very successful.
Yeah. Let me come in on that because I think there's a very important point that you made. And Mr. Franco, I want you to answer that question. A few weeks ago, when Prime Minister Modi and President Trump met, this issue came up where what Iran has done, yesterday and was earlier done a few weeks ago by the United States Armed Forces, where they attacked a commercial shipping vessel. And in that incident too, Indian lives were lost. So how is that any different from what Iran has done?
Well, first of all, I couldn't disagree more with your so-called expert here on every point. The first point I would say is the following. That was an accident and has been a statement by the U.S. government. We've never targeted commercial vessels. That there can be collateral damage in a conflict is unfortunate. And that
we haven't heard any word of apology if it was an accident. We should have had an apology or a statement. Even President Trump didn't address the issue.
It was an accident. Do you think... it was an accident. It was and it's definitely part of our blockade and effort. But we are not targeting, and anybody who looks at this objectively, commercial vessels. And anybody on this program who says otherwise, other than the Iranian guest, knows that's not true. That's not what the United States does. Secondly, with respect to your experts' analysis, we're not talking about the United States controlling this. This should be controlled by international law. People should be able to use that waterway any way they want. No one is bound by that MOU, and certainly our Arab allies in Oman are not. Iran has no right to do that, any more than the United States has a right to control the Strait of Hormuz. So that's a fallacy. in and of itself. Lastly, diplomacy, with all due respect to all of you, Iran doesn't understand diplomacy. This is a terrorist state that has no interest in diplomacy. This has just been a tactic and a pause. You have to understand their mindset. Their mindset is still the same, to create terror throughout the region and dominate the Middle East. That's their objective. And that is the concern of our Arab allies in the region. And this will all be very much to India's detriment if there's ever control of the Strait of Hormuz fully by Iran, which the United States will not let that happen. Well, there should be a free and open.
Well, any kind of fighting or conflict in the Middle East is to India's detriment. I don't think there's any controversy about that. But Brahma Chalani, since he's taken your name, would you like to respond to Mr. Franco?
Well, first, it wasn't an accident. The killing of Indian sailors was a deliberate action on the part of the U.S. Navy. The irony is that the U.S. Navy enjoys logistical support at Indian ports in peacetime. The U.S. Navy, when it hit the 3 commercial tankers, it exchanged messages, communication with the crew of the 3 tankers. Radio logs show that there was detailed communication between the crew and the U.S. Navy. They identified the crews as Indian nationals and yet went ahead and struck the 3 vessels. And President Trump, far from expressing even regret for those killings, justified those killings by saying seafaring is a risky business. He justified that in the presence of Prime Minister Modi.
There you go.
This, as you know, has inflamed popular passions in India.
Yeah.
India is a neutral country. India has always taken a neutral position in conflicts. But I think the important point about international law is this, that before Trump launched his war of aggression against Iran, the Strait of Hormuz was open to all ships. There was never a problem in modern history with shipping the Strait of Hormuz. It's Trump's war of aggression that has created this problem.
Yeah, well,
all right. Okay. Let me bring in General Dhillon as well. Coming to you, Mr. Franco, in just a minute. I want to bring in General Dhillon. Thank you for your patience, General. How are you looking at this? Because on the one side, you have Iran. On the other side, you have U.S. India has diplomatic ties with both these countries. Both the countries, there's a historical relationship as well. But in this conflict, it is Indian sailors who are now at the receiving end. And this is causing a huge amount of worry, not just because of the sailors, but also because of the presence of so many Indians in the Middle East. General Dhillon.
Good evening, Madhav, and good evening to the fellow panelists and all your viewers. First of all, talking about the incident which happened where 3 Indian sailors got killed, shooting at a maritime civilian vehicle, ship in the international waters by the military ships is a deliberate attack on a civilian ship in our international water. There is nothing called accident in this. And the Indian lives lost were the killings which happened on international water. Let that be very clear. Now, having said that, this deal, or whatever you call it, memorandum of understanding, if it is a memorandum of understanding, misunderstandings were there from minute 1. This deal was going nowhere because look at the terms. The you can say freezing of the Iranian assets, that is the financial assets, okay. Then opening of the Strait of Hormuz, okay. Regime change, no mention, which was the initial aim of the USA when they entered this war. Nuclear ambitions of Iran, okay, 60 days, 6 months, this, that, no clear-cut mention. And Israel and Hezbollah and Lebanon. These are the people who are going to create problems in this deal. Israel, which is a party in this war, was never part of the deal. And second most important thing is when the deal is broken or the deal breaker, the person, if a court of law is allowing the 2 warring parties or 2 conflicting parties to reach a compromise, anyone not behaving, the court of law will punish him. Now here, the mediator is someone who doesn't have any power to tell either party to do this or not to do this.
Right.
So this deal was to fail from minute 1, like I said. And another thing, the Gulf countries, which were at the receiving end, they were under the impression that Americans will provide them security, which America failed to. And they're at the receiving end. They have to stay in this region. America can go away. they were not part of the deal. They are still at the receiving end. And now coming to what Mr. Chilani said, the ratings at back home, they were at the lowest when on 28th of February. So they thought, okay, entering this war might rake up the ratings. It didn't happen. When USA was not winning this war, the ratings fell further.
Right.
Then they thought probably reaching a deal would bring it back. That brought them further because the terms of deal were not at all in the favor of America. And now this whole thing is getting back to again where a no one's war is now becoming everyone's war in the world.
Okay, let me bring in fact, Mr. Franco on that. Many questions there, Mr. Franco. First of all, the deal itself was lopsided and was doomed to fail. There's criticism of Trump happening in the United States as well as we speak. But the larger question is this. The allies of the United States in the Middle East who are now at the receiving end, whether we're talking about Qatar, UAE, Jordan, and other countries which also in the past have been attacked, they are having serious concerns about the US presence and why they have a military base for what reason. It's essentially to protect them, and they failed to do that in the recent past.
Well, let me speak about the MOU first of all. It's not an agreement. It's a memorandum of understanding to lead to an agreement. So there is no agreement. I do share the view of many people in the United States that it was poorly drafted. And it's poorly drafted because, as I mentioned earlier, you have to have the mindset, which people in the West often do not, of what the Iranian regime's ultimate goals are. So it was flawed from that perspective. I do think both sides wanted a pause for a period of time. And therefore, I think both sides probably knew this was going to lead to this. But that aside, that's just an observation. I would tell you that moving forward with this, with respect to our Arab allies, this is a curious thing that you raise. We actually want to use our assets, for example, in Saudi Arabia, to actually protect and be able to degrade Iran further. It's been our Arab allies that have asked for this restraint on the part of the United States. And we have deferred to that because they are in the neighborhood. So at some point here, with the exception of the United Arab Emirates, I believe Iran is playing with fire, and our Arab allies will join the fight against Iran. And at that point, when you say protection from Iran is precisely what we just did yesterday. As your map outlined, it's hitting particularly all the assets along the Gulf that they utilize to create the terror and try to control it. Okay. Obviously, I disagree with the two other guests from India who have sympathized with Iran. This is a terrorist state that has created problems in the region for 47 years, is determined to dominate the region, is determined to spread a Shia terrorism, and that is what we need to counter. And the United States will not let it possess a nuclear weapon.
Well, I can only tell you, both of the gentlemen who you refer to are widely read, widely respected, and they're known commentators on their own field. So I wouldn't venture down saying they're pro-Iran or they're anti-United States. India's neutral.
They're not very well. They're not very well known in the United States. And
maybe not, maybe or maybe not, but I'm just telling you they are very well-known columnists here in India, so let's not try and attribute the merit of any of them. But let me quickly, in fact, for our viewers, bring out the implications of all of this as far as India is concerned. What are we likely to see in terms of this fighting? If this does blow up into a bigger, wider conflict, these are the concerns that India very clearly has. One is the security of crude and LNG imports, first concern. Second, higher global crude oil prices, something that we've just believed we've managed to stave off, but now it's rising once again, as pointed out. Pressure on the rupee and the import bill itself. There's also the fourth concern of a possible rise in fuel and transportation costs. Concern number 5, safety of Indian crews and Indians in the Gulf. There's also a concern about threat to shipping connected to Indian ports. So let me go back to General Dhillon. General Dhillon, these are some very, very real concerns that India has. Energy security, the economic impact of all of this, and of course, as we were discussing earlier, the safety of Indians there.
Madhav, like I said, it was a nobody's war. Now it's everybody's war. Every single individual on this planet is getting impacted by this war. And we have to be very clear, nations have to fight their own wars within. And so has to India. The impact of this war is clearly there on the world, and it is there on India also. We have to look at alternate sources of energy. We have to look at alternate routes of energy supply. We have to look at logistics chain supply. We have to look at our domestic consumption policies. We have to look at our long-term economic policies. We have to look at our maritime power projection capabilities in the future. And more importantly, we have to look at where we stand as a multi-aligned nation in this community of nations. So these are the things which India has to do it for themselves. No one is going to come and do it for us.
Absolutely.
We need to control our domestic issues. We need to control our regional issues. We need to control our international issues. Nobody is happy with India's rise, and India has to rise on its own.
Absolutely.
So we have to be very clear. We need to stand on our 2 feet.
No two ways about that. In fact, that's one very, very clear debate. And the dependence so much as far as foreign fuel imports, that is a very, very key discussion point at this point of time. Lieutenant General KJS Dhillon, Dr. Brahma Chelani, as well as Adolfo Franco and Syed Imamia, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this evening.